right, friends, let's settle in. Let's just each get comfortable physically in our space that we've chosen for these few minutes. And if that comfort for you means closing your eyes, I would invite you to do that. If it means just softening your gaze, then do that. Or find you a spot, maybe on the wall or somewhere stationary that you can focus. You just find a way to really enter into this present moment that works for you. Maybe you sit up nice and tall. Maybe you've got something that you're leaning into. Maybe you are lying down. But again, it needs to work for you. And so as you allow yourself to physically arrive, the mental parts, the emotional parts, the energetic parts, they'll just gently begin to follow. And so as you're doing that, I would encourage each of us, just pay attention to how we're breathing. If the way that it's coming in and going out feels right, then just continue. If you feel like it needs a little more attention, then maybe you slow it down, deepen it. Just whatever feels right for you. And as we settle in together, I would ask that we each just check in and see what's going on in our heads. What are those lists that there are things that haven't been checked off and they're just knocking on our mind, on our thoughts, reminding us? What are those unfinished tasks from the day that we are being asked to carry into tomorrow? What are the things that you're worrying about? What are the things that you're looking forward to? Just notice what's going on in your head. What's filling up the space? It's causing all the chatter. We don't come to meditation just to tell our mind to stop. We come to become so aware of what's going on. And that awareness begins to teach us something about our thoughts, about our distractions, about our way of being, or our lack of being, and how much we are doing. And so I would encourage us all, just notice. And through the practice, as I guide us through just these reflections, and then we get quiet and we each just sit, continue to notice. Without judgment, without frustration, just notice. So the first part of this year, we began a journey through the Yoga Sutras, and it took us a while to get through the whole first book, and we are just now entering the second book. And each part of these sutras, they stand alone. But the really interesting part about where we are now is now we're in the practice part. Now we're in these beautiful tools that were given to us as the how. The first several weeks that we were together in this new year were all about the why. Why do we show up? Because it helps our mind to become calm. It helps our emotions to become at ease. It helps us to catch glimpses of peace. And so we sat for many weeks just really exploring the why. But Patanjali, this incredibly wise sage from a couple thousand years ago, decided that it was important in chapter 2 to give us the how. He inspired us with the why. He assured us that our mind can let go of the distractions. It can find moments of ease and peace without disturbance. And if he would have just left us there, that, like everything else in life, would have felt like it was unattainable. But he knew the human condition, and so he's given us this beautiful entire chapter where we are now on the how. And so where we are today is this understanding of we want to have peace and calm in our mind. We want it to resonate through every inch of our body. We want it to align with our energy and how we show up in the world. But we've got to recognize the things that are stumbling blocks to that. And so today is just about understanding some of those stumbling blocks, and then each day for the next few days, we're going to sit with each of those. See how they manifest and how they show up in each of our lives. So just like I said in the beginning, we become more aware. We don't show up to meditation to fix something, to solve a problem. We just show up to get a little more aware. And then the next time, a little more aware. And so he begins chapter 2 with this Yoga Sutra that talks about these 5, what he calls Kleshas. And there's lots of words of how you translate that, but probably the easiest is afflictions. Things that just get in the way. And so if I were to ask you what are the top 5 things that get in the way of your peace and your calm and your ease, we could all name them. But that's not what we're doing today. We're looking at kind of these big categories that this ancient, incredibly wise human understood about how we think, what our nervous system is like, how we get impressions in our mind that tend to stick, right or wrong, good or bad. And so he introduced these 5 kleshas, and he said, the number 1 klesha that we all struggle with is avidya. And most scholars would translate that to be ignorance. But Patanjali says it's not just this not knowing, so get rid of the word ignorance. He says think of it as a lack of awareness. A lack of awareness. And then he goes on to say, and then the second one, besides this lack of awareness that we really need to be mindful of, is this Sanskrit word called asmitya, which is our ego. This ego that tells us that how we see the world is how the world is. And we know that that tends to be a little bit distorted, or maybe in some cases a lot distorted. And so we've got to sit with this idea of avidya, this lack of awareness, not really knowing who we are. And then we've got to grapple with this ego, this having this really distorted view of reality based on how we've experienced things so far and how we believe them to be. And then the next 2 are really interesting. They kind of go together. They're called raga and devesha. They are the attachment and the avoidance. And how he knew 2,500 years ago that we would be living in this contemporary society that teaches us to grab onto the things that make us feel good and to avoid the things that don't. That's what those 2 kleshas are talking about. Attachment to the stuff that we like, that makes us feel good, and avoiding the things that we do not. And then the 5th one's very interesting. It's this idea of being afraid of dying. It's called abhinivesha. To the point that we don't live in the present moment because we're so fearful of what's coming next. And so again, if we had each named 5 things in our life that we think are getting in the way, I have a feeling we could probably start to put them into these categories that he described so long ago. And every person that I've met and that I've taught these concepts to and that I've discussed them with, we all agree. These are things with which we all struggle. And so I want to just go through each one and just have us each sit for just a few breaths and notice, how does that one feel on you? Does it resonate? Does something come to mind that you understand, yeah, this is one of my struggles, one of my afflictions, as he called them. And then in the course of the coming days, we'll sit with each one individually. And we will really work on becoming aware of where are each of our stumbling blocks. Because if you don't know what they are, how do you know how to move through life? And so first, this one of avidya, this lack of awareness, this lack of self-awareness. Just think about, have you ever just felt lost? Like you don't know who you are, you don't know where you're going, you don't know who you're supposed to be. You just keep playing these roles and putting on these masks and putting on these labels and these titles, but at the end of the day, you don't know you. And it doesn't mean you're struggling with that now, but maybe you can identify a point in your life where that was so evident. And then the second one, ego. It's not ego like what we think about in contemporary terms, but what he says is that our ego makes us believe that how we see the world is real. All of our past experiences color how we see things. If someone has hurt us, and then a situation really similar to that comes up later, we're going to have an impression of the reality of that situation. And it might look really different than the reality of the person next to us. So just think for a couple breaths. Where have you felt that in your life, where you're seeing things and you feel pretty certain that probably that's not the reality? And then those next two that go together, this attachment and this avoidance. Where in your life do you gravitate toward the things that just make you feel good, that give you pleasure? And where in your life are there things that you avoid? It's like the yum and the yuck comparison, the dessert and the vegetables, whatever resonates with you. Where have these shown up in your life? What are you really, really holding on to? And what are you avoiding? And then that last one, this idea of clinging to the life that you have to the point that you are so afraid of what's next that you forget to be in the present moment. You miss it. You live in a state of fear. And again, it may not be where you are today, but just see if there's a spot in your timeline where you felt that. There's another word that Patanjali uses to describe these 5 things. He doesn't just call them the afflictions or the struggle spots. There's a translation where he actually calls them the poison. And I think about all the things that we're doing in our lives these days to live clean. You can turn on any news article, any program, any advertisement, any social media post, and you're going to see something about clean swaps in your life. Looking at your meat to be nitrate-free, looking at your body wash products to be paraben-free, looking at your vegetables to be organic without pesticides. And so y'all, if we're doing those things to put clean soap on our body and clean vegetables on our dinner plates and clean meat for our family, shouldn't we be just as concerned about the poisons that exist within? The poisons that take up space in our head and then take this root into our heart, into our being. I read something the other day that said you can drink all the green juice that you want, but if you're still letting violent, hateful, negative energy into your space every day, there's no amount of green juice to stop that. There's no amount of green juice to change the impact that that energy will have on you. And so I think this idea of us sitting with these kleshas, of understanding them, will help us to make really clean, conscious choices for the inside us as much as we're doing it for the outside us. And I'll tell you, these next few times, today as well, they're hard. It was much more enlightening and uplifting to sit with the why of meditation, the why of the Yoga Sutras, because we talk about the peace. We talk about the ease, the letting go of the agitations, the letting go of the disturbances, and we feel empowered. But in this chapter, he says, let me tell you the tools. Let me take you beyond just the why. And let me really teach you the how. And it starts with being aware. And so we're going to just pause for just these next couple of minutes, and it'll just get quiet. And I just want all of this just to kind of sit and resonate. It's a lot. And again, we're going to sit with each one individually over time in the coming days. But for now, just what are the poisons that exist within you? What are the things, the patterns in your thoughts, in your way of being, in your way of seeing yourself and talking to yourself? What are the ones that are just not healthy? And then as we sit with that, sit with the question of, am I willing to start to make some clean swaps internally, not just externally? You don't have to answer that question today. It is a matter of just asking it and being open to asking it. What are the afflictions? What are the poisons in each of our lives? And are we ready for a change? So again, keep the body comfortable. Keep the breath as steady as feels right for you. And just notice what comes up across these next couple of minutes. And just continue to breathe slow, deep, steady breaths for yourself. I want to ask us just one more question as we head toward our time to close our practice. If there was someone in your life, someone that you love dearly, who was doing things that were harmful to themselves, wouldn't you do everything in your power to help them make different choices? To help them see the harm and choose something different for themselves? It could be the most seemingly inconsequential thing that might be causing harm, and it could be the biggest, most harmful habit that you can imagine. No matter where it falls on the continuum, wouldn't you do everything in your power to help them without judgment and with grace and compassion and encouragement? And I feel like that question is rhetorical because I know for each of us, as we think about who our people are, the answer is yes. And so I'd ask the same for us today, in the coming days, whenever it is that you're a part of this with us. As you become aware of what these poisons, these afflictions, these kleshas are in your life, and you start to feel the harm that they're causing, or the barrier that they are to your peace and your ease and your equanimity, can you give yourself grace and patience and compassion and the encouragement to begin to do something different. I commit to holding that space for you, to be that voice of encouragement and compassion until you are able to be that voice for yourself. Let's go back to that very first verse that kicked this whole study off just months ago of Yoga Chitta, Vritti Nirodha. This practice will calm and ease and lessen the waves, the turbulence, the distractions of our mind. And now it's time that our habits, our tools, our ways of being begin to support that. So let's just close it out with one slow, deep breath in. Just a commitment to the grace and the patience that it will take. And then a full breath out. It is an honor to walk this path with you. And I hope that if it's not today, that someday you begin to realize what an honor it is to walk it for yourself. Namaste.